How to fly fish from a pontoon boat for trout in lakes. Lesson number 6. Fishing from a pontoon boat. So you want to try fishing from a pontoon boat. Good for you. This video will show you all the equipment you will need, plus additional information that should make your trip more enjoyable. Equipment needed to fly fish from a pontoon boat. If you are already a fly fisherman, then you may have some of this equipment already. However, lake fly fishing uses techniques not used on rivers, and some of this equipment will need to be purchased. You will need to get a pontoon boat. If you don't have one, you will need to get a rod and a reel. You will need to select some fly line specifically for lakes. You will need a life jacket and waders. You will need fins and an extended fishing net. Selecting a pontoon boat. When you think of a pontoon boat purchase, there are some things you need to look out for. Price. A starter pontoon boat is going to cost you about $250 to $300. Because of this expense, some people look for used equipment. There's a problem when you buy used equipment. Here is a used boat that was purchased 3 years after it was made available for sale. The bladder exploded on one of the pontoons on its very first trip. So you can run into problems if you pick up a used boat because you have no idea how it was used or mistreated, and you will have no warranty to rely on if problems do come up. For example, most pontoon boats come with a bladder and are sold with a warranty on all parts of the boat. Repairs are usually free, with only the charge of shipping the pontoons to the company. I've had my pontoon boat for 15 years and only did one repair on one pontoon. That was only because one of the guys I was training decided to smoke a cigar on the pontoon boat and dropped ashes on the pontoon. It deflated, and only to the point where it could be rowed to shore. Lesson learned. 8 feet is the best length for lakes. If you want to use it in lakes and rivers, then you will need a 9-foot model. When you go to select a pontoon boat, make sure it comes complete. Many boats are sold with missing elements to keep the price low. The boat shown here, for example, is sold without a stripping apron. It is cheaper, but you'll need the stripping apron if you want to use the boat. But the boat may not be designed for the stripping apron you purchase, so you may need to modify the stripping apron to be used on the boat. Talk to a pontoon boat fisherman at the lake that you may be fishing, and he may be willing to allow you to use a spare boat if he has one. I carry a spare of everything in case I have forgotten something or need to use it. I've allowed other fishermen to join me and have shown them the ropes on fly fishing from a pontoon boat. I am sure there are other fishermen just like me that would be willing to help you. Because of the cost, many people think that it will work out better for them if they just get a float tube or a U-tube. A float tube could be a good way to start out, but there are some limitations. A float tube comes in different types and costs from $100 to about $200. They are smaller, so you will have to limit the equipment you can put on it. They are better for fishing small lakes, but wind is a factor in large lakes, and maneuvering in a float tube can be difficult. With a float tube, you have to purchase chest waders, which will run you about $150 to $250. Because you're in cold water for long periods, the cold water can cause you to get leg cramps. If your waders get a hole in them, you'll get very wet and miserable. So you can see, if you start out with a float tube, you will end up spending about the same amount of money with more limitations you will have to deal with. Fly rod and reel selection. If you are a river fly fisherman, you may already have a pole and a reel that you're using, or maybe two. If not, here are some tips on what to look for in rod and reel. Higher prices doesn't mean a better rod. When you start looking for a rod, you will find out there are hundreds to choose from, with prices that range between $25 and $2,500. If you need to buy a rod, go to the local Sportsman's Warehouse and get a Shakespeare Wild Fly rod for $39.99. Dick's Sporting Goods also sells rods which start at about $50. Rod length of 9 feet and weight of either 5 or 6. You want a 2-section 9-foot 5 or 6 weight rod. Some river fishermen have rods with 4 sections, and this will work on a lake, but a 2-section is much better. When you're out on the lake, if you have a 4-section rod and one section comes off, it can be very tricky to get everything back together. When you think about a reel, you need to remember they are usually designed for the type of fishing you're doing. For example, some reels are large to accommodate more line and have a sophisticated drag system to help fight large fish when you're in a river. On a pontoon boat, you don't reel in the fish. The line is pulled in by hand and placed in the stripping apron that is positioned in front of you. Large fish rarely take more than 40 feet of line when you're working to land them on a pontoon boat. Therefore, you can purchase a small reel and one that has a minimal drag system, like the Shakespeare 1094. They can be found online for just $10.99, and the shipping is usually $5. So get together with some other fly fishermen that are looking for reels too and buy a bunch of them at one time. I started out by buying 3 of my own. Then my fishing buddy liked them so much, he bought 3 also. Fly line selection. Each type of line has a purpose when they are used in combination with flies. The lines may be expensive to start, but it will last for years. Check out my video, Why Fly Line Selection is So Important. Fly leader selection. What about the leader? Knotless leader runs about $4 to $12 for mono, and fluorocarbon is higher in price. But there are some problems you may run into when you use knotless leaders. Tying your own leader. For $20 worth of leader material, you can make 34 9-foot leaders for only 60 cents each by using my lake formula. Watch my video on how to make your own leader. Blood knot tools. When you tie leaders together, most fishermen use a blood knot. It can be tied by hand, but there are some tools available that make it easier. They can be very expensive, between $10 and $30. The best ones are priced about $17 to $30, but most tools available do not float. I can show you how to make your own, and when you buy the materials needed, you will have enough material to make 2 complete tools for $4.50 each. Also, you have enough extra material to make 8 tools, but you need to buy some additional components. Then your tool cost would be only $2.25. Watch my video on how to make your own blood knot tool. Life jacket and waders. In terms of safety, don't think cheaper, think survival. Select the best life jacket and waders you can buy. 2 types of waders. Chest type waders run between $150 to $250, and I'm not sure how long they last because I don't use them. I buy hip waders. They run between $35 and $55 and can last over a year before they can get cracks in them that will cause them to leak. but a little dab of silicone can seal these leaks and give you more life for your waders. Fins and fishing net. I rank fins by two types. One I call float tube fins, and the other pontoon boat fins. The fins on the top are $29.95, the float tube fins, and they work okay on a pontoon boat. But in windy conditions, they have such a low surface area as compared to the other fins, they require more work to get around. Pontoon fins are a little more expensive, $39.95, but come with a warranty on the straps. If you buy from Crate Company, you send in your broken straps and they will send you a new set. A regular fishing net will work, but some large fish will struggle harder when you try to bring them in between the pontoons. So you'll need to net them on the sides of the pontoons. But an extended net allows you to net them in front of the pontoon boat, and they don't seem to struggle as much. Flies you can use to start. To start out with, you'll need a size 8 and 10 woolly bugger in black and green. Next, you'll need an imitation of Calabaius, which is usually a pheasant tail nymph in size 10 and 12. Brown is a good color to start with, and get a black one also. Next, you'll need a fly called the Stillwater Nymph in size 10 and 12. Get them in the color green and brown. Don't start out with flies that have bead heads. Lakes are usually shallow, and bead heads will make your flies difficult to control and sink in a manner that does not match the natural that lives in the lake. They also can end up in the weeds. Get a small fly box to hold your flies. There are lots of videos online that can teach you how to cast. Try to find one where they're casting wet line and not dry line. There is a difference in the technique that you will use for wet lines on a lake. Fishing from a pontoon boat. There's a video on this site called How to Set Up a Pontoon Boat. It tells you how to put that boat together before you go onto the lake. On the lake, you actually use your oars to position yourself in the water that you want to begin to fish. On this site also, there's a video called First Lake of the Year to Fish. Refer to it to help you with your first fishing trip on your new pontoon boat.